Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard. I'm TCaptainX. In this video, I'm going to be showing you 10 different movement techniques that you can use in Black Ops 6 to help give you a competitive edge, and especially point out new techniques that we can do this year in Call of Duty thanks to omnimovement. I'm going to very quickly touch on some settings related to movement, but I highly recommend you go watch either my controller or mouse and keyboard settings videos. That way you do not miss out on anything, because if you have the wrong settings, it is like having a crumbling foundation on your house. So for my controller players, button layout is extremely important. Now, I play with a custom controller that has 4 paddles on the back. This is an aim controller. My bottom right is slide, bottom left is jump, top right is triangle or switch weapons, and then top left is going to be square or reload. When I hold the controller, my middle fingers rest on the bottom 2 paddles, and then I can curl up to hit the top paddles if needed. 2 paddles I would say are very necessary. The 3rd and 4th are kind of just bonuses, and I will say this year in Black Ops 6 with omnimovement, having paddles is more necessary than ever. However, that does not mean you cannot have great movement without paddles, and there's 2 options here. Number 1, we leave our button layout on preset and we play claw. This is where we curl our right index finger down and that we hit our circle, our jump, all that with our index finger. This is very awkward to me and I just can't do it, but the benefit of this is that we can slide, jump, and we can still aim all at the same time. Because if you don't have paddles, you would have to jump and take your thumb off, or slide and take your thumb off the analog stick, and you can't aim and move at the same time. The other option though, if you can't do claw, is you change to bumper jumper tactical. Now this is very awkward to get used to, but you can do fantastic on it. What this does is it makes your R3 our slide. So again, we can hit R3, press it on the right analog stick and keep aiming, and then L1 is jump. Again, it's very awkward, but we can aim and move all at the same time if we do that. If you are interested in upgrading to a custom controller, I have been using aim controllers from aimcontrollers.com for over 2 years now. They are by far my favorite custom controllers, mainly because to me, the paddles on the back are the most comfortable and most responsive of any brand. They also come with a lifetime warranty on all of the modded parts. They have PS5, PS4, and Xbox controllers. If you want more information on this, I go in great depth on how I build my controller on my controller settings Black Ops 6 video that I just posted. If you do get one, code TCaptainX will save you quite a lot of money at checkout, by the way. When it comes to sensitivity, I just want to point out you do not need a super high sensitivity in order to have good movement. Just look at Biffle. He plays on the default 6.6 and he's one of the best players, if not the best player in the entire game. Sprint assist is basically what auto tac sprint, what used to be, was in old games. So tactical sprint assist on means that as soon as we press the left stick, you get straight into your auto tac sprint. This is generally the best setting for having good, fast, and fluid movement. But if you don't like that, I would recommend just playing it with on, and then you have to press L3 to get into your tac sprint. Make sure you though, in the show more, you turn your sprint assist delay all the way down to 0. For your slide dive behavior, the best setting is gonna be hybrid, but this can be awkward to get used to. What this does is if you press slide, you will slide, but if you are pressing L3 while you hit slide, you dive. This is a bit awkward, and you also definitely need to play ideally with tactical sprint assist on for the setting, but that is gonna be best in order to both slide and dive. However, if you just can't do it, I would honestly say slide only is the next best, because tapped slide has a very large delay in your sliding and it makes your slide cancels not as fluid. Then make sure your sprint restore and sprint maintain sprint are on. Also with our dead zones, make sure you turn your left 6 maximum down a little bit. I would say as low as 60 or up to 70. This will decrease your dead slides and also just make your movement a little bit snappier and allow you to get to sprinting faster. So let's start with the most commonly used movement in Call of Duty, and that is the slide cancel. This is done simply by sprinting forward and pressing slide. That is literally it. If we have that slide maintain sprint setting on, by just continuing to press forward on the left analog stick, you will automatically stand up and get back to a sprint, also assuming you have tactical sprint assist on. If you don't though, you can cancel the slide at any time by pressing jump during that. So slide jump, versus if I let it go long, you can do a longer side. You also can cancel it by sprinting or pressing L3. So slide L3 will also get me out of that slide animation. Now, a new thing in Black Ops 6 compared to MW3 is that we can aim during the slide and shoot, whereas in MW3, we had to use a special perk in order to do that. Sliding also gives us a slight speed boost. So actually, Compared to tac sprint, it's not any faster, but when that tac sprint runs out, when my guy puts his gun down here, sliding actually gives me a short speed boost, and especially paired with going down like stairs, we can get much faster movement speeds. distance. Now, it's not going to be as fast as just pulling out our melee weapon by holding melee, but for short distances, sliding is quicker. Okay, but when do we slide cancel? So the most common thing is going to be coming around a corner. What's very important though is that we start the slide before the corner, and that we also start to aim during the slide. That way, if an enemy is there, we are coming around this corner very quickly and getting shots on. Now, what's unique this year is we can now slide sideways or backwards. And this is nice because previously we would have to kind of adjust our aim as we came around the corner, but now we can kind of center down the lane and just come straight to the side and slide cancel in and out of cover without having to worry about that. One thing that you just saw me do there was I actually did a dead slide, which is where I try to slide, but my guy will crouch instead. To prevent this, it's very simple. We just need to make sure that we get up to a full sprint and that you aren't too quick about hitting that slide button. So as long as you give yourself about a half second and get into a sprint, you will avoid those dead slides. The big advantage to slide canceling versus just coming around a corner like normal is that we come around much faster and also lower. So this is gonna throw our enemies' shots off compared to if you just walk around the corner and start shooting. You also don't have to slide cancel just coming around corners. If you have higher skill, you can also, when you're caught in the open, we can use slide canceling to all of a sudden slide to the side and throw off our enemies' shots so that we can line up our shots on the enemy. So the next form of movement is going to be the jump shot, and this is probably the simplest form of movement we have. It is incredibly easy to do. It is literally just jumping while shooting, or especially jumping around a corner and shooting. And same with slide canceling, it's all about the timing. We don't want to jump after we come around the corner. We want to make sure that we jump before we come around the corner so that we're already aiming our gun by the time we've exposed ourselves around that corner. And then of course we can now do this laterally or even backwards, and we don't have to just run forward because of omni movement. Now again, just like slide canceling, having that good centering is very important. Another thing we can do with this is if you're just in the middle of a gunfight is you can just spam jumping while shooting. Spamming your jump button while shooting is going to generally be better than just standing still because now we're a moving target. It's going to likely prevent the enemy from hitting headshots. Also, the dexterity perk, which is a perk 1, it's one of the red perks, will help your jumping a lot. What it does is it decreases that bob of your gun when you're jumping, and it just makes it easier to see what you're shooting at while doing different movements. Now, a big question is though, what is better, jump shotting or slide canceling? And the answer is clearly slide canceling. Slide canceling sends you around a corner much faster and lower, whereas jump shotting is generally like, it's just not that jarring of a movement and you're a lot easier to track during a jump shot versus a slide cancel typically. Number 3 is a super simple one, but I want to cover it really quick, and that is strafing. So one thing that's nice is with omni movement, we can now strafe laterally much faster this year. And of course, when we're shooting, we can continue to strafe left and right, but not as slow unless you build your guns to have ADS walking movement speed. But what I want to point out is at least strafing while shooting is much better than just standing still while shooting, because one, you're a moving target, so it's harder for your enemies to hit you. And also, if you're a controller player, you're going to get more aim assist as long as we have input on that left stick. Technique number 4 is going to be diving, and diving is not new to the game, but the way we dive and the fact that we can now dive and shoot at the same time, that is new this year. Also, we can now dive sideways and shoot, or we can dive backwards and shoot. Again, this is going to depend how you do this based on your slide dive behavior. For me, on the hybrid setting, I press L3 and then hit my slide button in order to do that. If you are on mouse and keyboard, I highly recommend having a dedicated slide and dive button because it makes performing both of these much easier. So diving is best more of a defensive mechanic. If I'm running away from someone, it's best for me to dive and get behind cover versus using it offensively. Now, we definitely still can use diving offensively, but generally a quick answer is slide canceling is probably better than diving around corners, and here's why. When we land after a dive, there is kind of a jarring effect, and even now I have the dexterity perk on, which is going to reduce that. It is still pretty jarring, and you can see as I land, my aim really gets thrown off there. Also, when we dive and land, we are kind of stuck on the ground for a moment, and that makes us a very easy target to shoot at because we're just lying still on the ground. However, I really like diving if you're on an elevated surface, just because you can get so far out, but again, it is tricky to hit our shots that way. I would say the only big benefit of diving around corners compared to sliding is that it just creates some variety. Some people might not expect it, and especially if you're using it from verticality. Next, we have a movement that has been in Call of Duty forever, and that is the drop shot, but there is a new way to do it this year that makes it quite strong. So drop shotting is literally just where we go prone in front of an enemy, and the reason this is beneficial is that our aim, or where they have to aim, now drops down, and they have to adjust their aim because of that. We only want to do this though when we are in very, very close quarters, like right up on them, or maybe like 5, maybe 10 meters max. But when you get farther away, the farther away you are, the easier it is for them to correct their aim, and they're just gonna land headshots on you. Also this year, it seems like it's a bit slower to get down into a drop shot, almost like it's delayed, so it's not as strong. But if we do this sliding drop shot, which all we do for that is we sprint, hold our slide button, and then you will eventually stop into a prone. Now, the reason this is cool is we can come around a corner, we can slide like we're gonna slide cancel, but then we can then stop our momentum all of a sudden. And on the enemy POV, they're gonna think that you're gonna slide cancel around and keep going, but instead you are actually kind of all of a sudden stopping your momentum. And you can stop it earlier by kind of pulling back on the opposite direction of your left stick. So if I go right on the left stick and then I all of a sudden push left as I continue to hold that slide button, it's gonna stop my momentum and stop me dead in my tracks. And from there, it's important that we probably don't wanna just stay here, but we want to slide prone and then kind of immediately get back up. You can start spamming jump, strafing, or whatever to do with it as well. And again, this is going to be best used in more close range situations. You don't want to necessarily do this when an enemy is way down a lane, because then you're just going to stop moving. It's easier for them to shoot you. If you are on mouse and keyboard, this is a little bit different, and you also have to be careful about this, because if we have any input to our WASD when we press our dive button or our prone button, it's going to accidentally dive us. So one, to drop shot, make sure we completely come off of WASD and hit our prone button. But if you want to do that sliding drop shot, it's assuming you have 2 different keybinds, it's going to be slide prone to do it, which honestly on mouse and key, it's kind of easier to do it. You just have to hit more buttons is all. Technique number 6 is going to be another one that's been in the game for a while, and that is snaking. But this year, it seems like snaking is even more broken than previously. So snaking is basically repeatedly drop shotting behind cover that is about going to be waist to chest height, aka what we would call a head glitch. And from the enemy POV of snaking, if done correctly, the enemy cannot see you. You are basically invisible, but on your POV, you can see them. And this allows you to basically repeatedly pop up and see if the enemy is pushing you. And then of course, if they're in the open, to take easy shots where they basically can't shoot you back. Now, what's hard about snaking this year is that it's very easy to accidentally slide or dive backwards, especially mouse and keyboard. It's even harder to snake this year on mouse and keyboard. It can be done. You just have to make sure that you are not inputting on WASD when you are hitting the prone button. And usually what's best is you want to go backwards in prone and then sprint forward to stand back up. That's kind of the, so back in prone, sprint forward, back in prone, sprint forward. That's kind of the process of how we do this. And then of course we can pop up and hit shots as well. Technique number 7 is pretty much a new one. I'm going to call this off angle holds. And really what this is since we have the ability this year to lay sideways or lay on our back, we can now lay sideways and peek around a corner. And from the enemy POV, they can only see a little bit of your body, versus if I were to prone forward, like straight on around a corner like this, they could see my entire body, and I'm gonna stick out more and be more easily seen. So getting into this is a bit awkward. What you have to do is kind of from before it, you have to do an omni movement sideways dive, and then you can kind of crawl around and position yourself. But if you crawl too much forward, your guy will come out of that sideways laying. So you have to kind of position it right and then inch out using only lateral movements, because if you start going forward, your guy gets out of that sideways laying. And then also when we dive backwards and lay backwards, or you also can get in that position just by proning, and then by turning around, you'll get in this position as well. If you're up in a corner or like in foliage, for some reason, when you're laying on your back, it is just harder for enemies to see you in this position. So again, this is more of like, not so much a direct movement technique, but it's just something to incorporate into your kind of portfolio of different moves you have. All right, technique number 8 is what I'm calling the ledge slide. It's a little bit more advanced of a mechanic, but not very hard to do. Basically what we're gonna do is you're just going to start sliding at the edge as you're coming off of a ledge. edge off of ledge. And then you can slide again as you land. The benefit of this is that it kind of gives you a speed boost and you're actually going to go very far. And from the enemy POV, you are moving quite fast when you actually watch someone do this. And it's just a way to kind of get around faster, but also add some movement if you're coming off of a ledge from high ground. For the timing, you just need to press the slide in midair before you hit the ground and it will time into that next slide. And you could also just jump and press slide in midair. As long as you press it anytime in midair, your guy will automatically land into a slide and you're just gonna get kind of like a big speed boost into that slide. For technique number 9, we have what I'm calling the dive cancel. This is kind of like, I believe they call this the G dive last year in MW3. Basically, if we dive and clip our legs on a ledge that is a little bit like lower than our body height, you will get out of that dive, and instead of landing in the dive, you can immediately stand back up and kind of start shooting and getting into all the rest of your movement. So this one's a little bit tricky because you have to find surfaces that you can clip and you have to time your dive so that you are clipping your legs as you're finishing that dive. The final technique I want to give you guys has to do with doors. So if used properly, doors can be very strong to your advantage and can disorient your enemies. So one thing you can do that you may not know is you can actually shoot doors open. This might be a good thing to do if an enemy is waiting behind. You can shoot them open and see if anyone's behind here. But the other thing is that it's very easy to kind of go in and out and slam these doors open. As I come around this corner and slamming it open, it is going to be harder for the enemy to kind of see me coming out, and it's just more disorienting to slam these back and forth as they come out. Also, if an enemy is on the other side of a door, when you go through it, if you sprint through it, it will actually disorient them and push them out of the way. This is very, very disorienting to be on that side of the thing, and it's a very easy way to get your camera broken. Now, to wrap things up, I do want to talk about why we use movement and what the actual purpose of it. Number one, we can chain multiple different movements together, and the more you play, the more kind of game sense you have, the more situations you'll understand, and it will naturally occur to you of what type of movement you should use. There's not always a right answer, like this movement is always better than this situation, but there tends to be situations where maybe one or two options are going to give you the greatest chance of success. Remember that the goal of movement is to make yourself a difficult target to hit so that your enemies are having trouble to track you and have trouble landing shots on you. And what you should be thinking about when using movement is that you want to rapidly cross the camera of an enemy. So this applies mostly at close range, where that if I am just running straight at someone or standing still, it's easy for them to shoot you. However, if I am running perpendicular, like I'm slide canceling perpendicular, I'm diving across their screen, especially coming around a close corner, then that is very disorienting and they are forced to significantly adjust their aim in order to hit you. At the end of the day, if you want to get better with your movement, you simply need to practice. Now, some ways to do this outside of the game itself is one, you might look stupid, but you can go into zombies and practice these movements. You might look like a sweat who's trying to break cameras of zombies, but it's a lower pressure environment that you can practice these movements on. Also, set up a 1v1 with some of your friends in a private match and set up and practice these specific movements. Practice snaking, drop shotting, diving from ledges, and get a feel of what that is to hit your shots in the middle of while you're performing these different movements. If you guys need aiming tips or graphic settings tips, I've got videos on both of those, and I'd highly recommend you check them out after this video. By the way, guys, I do stream on both YouTube here, which is my main platform, and I'm also starting to multi-stream to Twitch as well. So whichever you prefer, please come check out a stream, ask me questions if you have more. Feel free to drop a comment and I'll do my best to answer your questions. I hope you guys enjoy this video. Leave a like and subscribe for more stuff like this to get better at Call of Duty. And I will put some videos on screen that you probably want to go watch to help your Call of Duty experience.